right, it's 4 o'clock, and I want to check to see if Susan Lindahl on the phone as well. Okay, she might be joining us a little bit here. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here in a meeting that we finally get to do. We've had to shuffle the calendar several times, so thank you for your patience. I think that's one of the many things we've learned in this pandemic is to be flexible and try to figure out how to put together meetings both in person and virtually. So thank you for being here. Those who are able to attend in person as well as those on the phone. Let's start with introductions, and I'm going to have everyone just go around the room and introduce themselves because that'll help put some names with some faces, and I'll turn to Susan Metzger.
Susan Metzger.
And I'm going to pause and say if everyone can turn the little microphone on, it'll pull the blue light on if you push the button. There you go.
Angelique Rodriguez-Kenyon.
Mike Fulton, Superintendent.
Joe Gilhouse, Director of Secondary Services.
Russell Knapp, the CFO.
David Arterberry, Steve Nichols.
Terry Wintering, Executive Assistant to the Superintendent and Clerk of the Board.
Tyler Clubb, Director of Facilities.
Rick Atha, Deputy Superintendent.
Melissa Rooker.
Gary Strout.
Mary Sinclair.
And Chris, your turn.
Chris White.
Great. And I'll check to see if Susan Lindahl's on the line. All right. Well, thank you all for introducing yourselves. We've got several items on the agenda today for the Facilities and Finance Committee here that we thought would be really pertinent and timely. And so we'll walk through the agenda that you received by email. But before we do that, I thought I'd turn to Dr. Fulton to see if he has any comments he'd like to share to kind of set the stage for our conversation and presentations. Dr. Fulton.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Stratton. Appreciate that. And also, thank you very much to the committee for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here today. We have some, as Mr. Stratton noted, some very timely topics for you related to the sale of the bonds. Also, an update for you on how we're doing, what we're doing with facilities as we start to get involved in those bond projects. And then finally, we'll have an update for you on the federal funds. And hopefully you had at least a brief opportunity to check out some of those links that we sent to you. If you didn't, that's fine. But I do encourage you to take a look at the links related to particularly the facilities updates and how we are using the federal money to support students in their learning over the next 3 years.
Great. All right. Thank you. Well, we'll move to the next item on the agenda, and our first topic for discussion is going to be around the finance and the process for actually selling the bonds that were approved at the beginning of this calendar year. And we're glad to have David Atterbury here. He's with Stiefel, and he's our bond counsel, financial advisor related to the bonds. And David, I'll turn it over to you to present to the committee here. Welcome.
Okay. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. What I was going to talk a little bit about, as Brad mentioned, is the upcoming bond issue. There's actually a few different components to it, so I wanted to kind of go through that with you. And then after that, I was just going to talk a little bit about the schedule that we're on to actually have the bonds get issued. As I'm going through any of this, I'll try not to get too far into the weeds, but if you want me to elaborate on anything, I'll be happy to do that. First of all, the plan right now is to... Oh, I'm sorry. The plan right now is to issue half of the amount that was approved by voters. So there would be what we were referring to as new money bonds issued of $132.11 million. Interest rates, though, as you may be aware, are so low right now that there is actually an opportunity for the school district to simultaneously do some refinancing, or in the municipal bond business, we call it refunding. So our plan right now is to issue two different series of bonds. And this table that you see, or this little chart that you see up on the screen, the two different bond issues are represented by the two different boxes. The box on the left, the green box, is a tax-exempt series of bonds. That means the purchasers of these bonds, the interest that you pay to them, it will be exempt from federal income taxes. That series of bonds, the 2021 A's, will be approximately a principal amount of about $157.8 million. and it will contain $132.11 million for the new projects, and the balance, about $25.7 million of proceeds from that issue will be used to refinance the school district's 2012 bond issue. Those bonds right now carry an interest rate on them of 2.4%. And we anticipate that through refinancing, you can probably lower the rate on those to somewhere. When we ran these numbers about a month or so ago, we thought you could lower it down to a rate of about 0.39%. So shave 2 full percentage points off of the interest rate, and that would generate about $888,000 of savings. The next series of bonds that's represented by the yellow box there, that's a taxable series of bonds. And the reason it's taxable is there are some 2015 bonds that the school district has that are not currently callable. And because they're not callable, you can't issue a new tax-exempt bond issue to refinance them, like we're doing with the 2021A bonds. But you can issue bonds that are taxable to refinance them. Now, the taxable bonds carry a little bit higher interest rate than tax-exempt bonds, but those taxable bonds are still at a low enough interest rate that it can create a pretty significant amount of savings for the district. So what the 2021B bonds in the yellow box, we estimate that what they'll look like is about an $87.54 million issue. The district would also take $9.85 million that it has currently in its budget to call bonds early in this budget year, and it would use that money then to refinance a portion of the 2015 bonds. Now, those old bonds carry an interest rate of about 4.5% on them, and we expect that we could refinance those down to a rate, when we last ran these numbers, about 2.34%, or generate just slightly under $18 million of debt service reduction for in the future for taxpayers. So now, since we ran these numbers, interest rates have dropped a little bit, about 1/10 to 2/10 of a percentage point. So these savings figures that you see here, both for the Series A and the Series B, are probably a little bit high, and the savings numbers are probably a little bit understated, because we think the new bonds could be sold at even a little bit lower rates than what we've shown here. So, a lot of detail there, but hopefully that will kind of give you an idea of what the new transaction will look like and why it's being structured the way it is. So, as far as the process goes, things are well underway to structure the bond issue and to get all of the disclosure documents and legal documents prepared for it. Back at the meeting on March 22nd, the board officially authorized proceeding with the sale of the bonds. We have our rating call scheduled for tomorrow at 3 o'clock. We actually already had a meeting last week to kind of review the questions that the rating agency would be asking and just generally prepare for the call. After that call occurs, they'll probably be releasing the rating about a week after that. And then if things go as planned, the offering document would then be distributed to potential purchasers around the 3rd of May, and the bonds actually be offered to the public the week of the 10th of May. And so that's the time at which the interest rates would be locked in and finalized, and the savings for the refinancing components would be determined at that time. And then at the meeting on May 17th, the board would review all the final results, and if things go as planned, they would adopt the final bond resolutions, officially issuing the new bonds. And then closing and funds would be delivered to the district on the 3rd of June. So that's sort of an overview of the structure and the process of issuing the bonds. Welcome any questions you might have about it. Yeah.
So you were saying that on the yellow box about refinancing, the district would use, was it $9 million from its budget to pay back bonds early? I mean, I'm trying to make sure I heard that correctly.
Sure. As part of its last budget, or when it prepared its budget, I should say, for the current fiscal year, the district had included about $9.85 million in it to pay off bonds early. So what we would be doing is we'd be using that 9.85 plus the proceeds from the 2021 B bonds to pay off early, or to put into an escrow to pay off early a portion of those 2015 bonds.
And Russ, could you want to elaborate on that? Which
I am losing you guys. What's the deal?
we can hear you just fine, Chris. Could you elaborate on which
Yes.
part of the budget is referred
So that
to there?
$9.8 million that he's talking about coming from our budget is from our bond and interest fund. So it's not from operating funds. Okay.
It's a separate part of the budget.
Yeah, it's a dedicated local mill levy, and all that fund is used for is to retire debt. And so we're able to use 9.8 million of that to set aside money to call these bonds.
Yeah, that money cannot be used for anything other than to pay debt.
That's correct.
Okay, other questions?
Just a point of clarification. David, if the timeline goes as printed here and goes to the board, my understanding is the funds would be available to the district on June 3rd, and those funds you're talking about would be about that $132.1 million. Correct?
Yep.
And that would be available for the district to spend on summer and fall projects, or available to spend over the next year or so.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. The other principal amount, the 25.6 and the 87.5, that is all being used to pay off old bonds. That won't be money that you get to pay for projects. Yeah.
Other questions? Chris, can you hear us on the line to ask any questions?
Yeah, I lost you for a while. Now I'm back.
Okay.
Came back. It went dead for a while.
Okay. All right. A couple of things you mentioned, David, was you said, I wrote down this fun little quote here. You said, and then if things go as planned. I love that. So is that assuming that we get the best bond rating we can? And I'm going to presume that we qualify at a AAA rating again. Is that the anticipated?
Yeah, that's the anticipated. We, like I said, we had a meeting last week where we kind of went through all the questions that the rating agency had to prepare. But we won't officially know the rating though, probably until, it's probably going to be at the end of the month here.
Okay. And I said this in our board meeting, and I'll do it here as well. A large reason that we're able to qualify for AAA rating, which allows us to have a very preferred rate on the bonds, is because the financial management of the district as a whole and the other previous bonds. And so I was going to give this an opportunity to give kudos to Russ Knapp and his staff, because am I fair to say it's almost like going through a mini audit every time you got to prepare for the bond ratings to get everything that they're needing in order to prove to them the financial management of the district. So thank you for your work there.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of information that's provided to them, and then they, will go through it and ask you questions about generally the operations of the district and the finance, they focus a lot also on the tax base, which is another very strong positive for the school district.
Go ahead. The other question I raised in the board meeting the other day was about premiums. Typically, when we go to market with these bonds, sometimes the bonds sell for more than the actual numbers that are listed here in these two yellow boxes.
Yeah.
And we anticipate that again?
Yeah, we do, and the way that premium is treated for the refinancing components, that premium is used to reduce the bond issue size. For the new money projects, that premium is made available to the school district, and can be used to pay for project costs or to pay debt service.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And I always raise that because sometimes it starts to get known that there is a premium on the sale. I want to make sure that that folks know that those dollars are very important, because at the very same time that we're talking about these bonds, we're also talking about increasing costs for these projects that we're getting ready to build. And so some of that helps with those, and I know that Dr. Atha and Tyler will talk about that in a little bit as well. Other questions about the financing here with the bonds? All right, seeing none. Thank you very much, David. This is very helpful. And thank you for your work on this, and good luck as we make our way through these dates on here to the eventual closing of the bond in early June.
Yeah, and hopefully rates will hold.
We'll all collectively knock on wood there. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we'll move on to the next item, which is the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. We've now come to know as ESSER. A new year, a new acronym, right?
Yes.
And so I'll turn to Russ Knapp, our Chief Financial Advisor, to give us an update on the ESSER dollars, and these are the relief funds that are made available for public schools and public districts like ourselves.
Yes, well,
Russ.
good afternoon. Yep, I have the task of updating you on the different 3 ESSER pots of money that will become available to the school district. In front of you is and on the screen is the chart that we can follow. We currently have ESSER 1 that was allocated based on the Title I formula. We received $2.6 million in ESSER 1, plus an additional $297,000 in ESSER 1 money for special education.
And Russ, I'm going to interrupt real quick. I'm sorry, just to make sure everybody understands. So these were part of the stimulus packages that have been approved.
Yes.
Correct.
So ESSER 1 has its authorization from the federal government under the CARES Act.
There you go.
So there's 3 separate federal acts that approve money for K through 12 public education across the United States. So the first pot of money came out of the CARES Act. ESSER 2 came out of what they call CRRSA, which is a Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriation. And then the most recent one is ARP, which is the American Rescue Plan, and ESSER 3 came out of that one.
Great, thank you.
Okay. So the district was allocated $2.6 million, and again, that is on the Title I formula for the state of Kansas. Another $297,000 for SPED. Out of that allocation, we had to set aside $109,000 for the non-public allocation. So that came out of our pot of money. For ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, it does not come out of our allocation. They set that aside separately at the state level, and they'll allocate that out to the non-public schools under a separate formula. As of April 14th, we have about $247,000 left of ESSER 1. So we'll have that all spent by the end of the fiscal year, June 30th. The Fed said you have to spend that by September 2022, so no problem there. A lot of the money we used for ESSER 1 was just to ramp up a lot of PPE, remote learning. We purchased Canvas through that for the first time, which we've integrated into our day-to-day curriculum and instruction operations, where the kiddos and parents can log in and see homework, get their homework assignments, et cetera, when they were remote learning. And they still use it while they're in person as well. So it was a great investment, and we were able to use ESSER 1 monies for that. At the same time, Johnson County, they got a direct allocation from the feds. It's probably known better as Sparks, but because Johnson County and Wichita County was so large, they got their money directly. They didn't go through the state, but they allocated $1.2 million to Shawnee Mission School District. We submitted some expenditures, and they reimbursed us for that all by December 2020. So that's all done and in the books. So that helped, and we submitted we bought some air scrubbers, close to about $720,000 worth of air equipment that helps purify air. And that was one of the biggest ticket items that we submitted to Johnson County. So now that brings us up to SR2. So that's currently the process that we're in now. We have to apply. So we're working on that application. We'll submit it to KSDE, and then it'll go in front of the Kansas State Board of Education for their approval. And then eventually it'll become available for us to draw down. We don't anticipate being able to draw down that until most likely June of this year or July for the first month of the fiscal year of next year. The spend by on that is September 23, and we anticipate $10,564,000 for that. Okay. Again, that was submitted, or that was allocated again by Title I, the allocation formula, as well as SR3 was Title I formula. We don't know our exact allocation on that. We anticipate that towards the end of April, the 1st of May. They indicated that if you go by the ratio that the state got about 2.25 times the amount on Title II. If you took that and applied it to our same, we might get about another $23.7 million of SR3 money. But again, we have not received that allocation. That's kind of what we're anticipating on getting. And that's important because we'll go over the next slide here in a minute to say how we're going to pay for the plan that we put in place that was presented to the board on April 12th. The only other usage for SR3 is they didn't say you had to use 20% to address learning loss. That won't be an issue, where the majority of it will be for learning loss. So, but that was nice for them to put that in there. And again, that goes to September 2024. So that takes us out all the way to the start of the 24-25 school year. And they use the word obligate. And I asked the question the other day to KSDE, and when they say obligate, the state has to obligate it to the different school districts. So still not sure if I get 24-25 to spend it, or if I have to really spend it by September 2024. That'll to be determined. So that's our different pots of money. I'm going to kind of flip over to the next slide. At the board meeting on April 12th.
Russ?
Yes.
I'm sorry, before. So that clarification there about obligate means that you're talking about kind of that operational definition of what it means to spend it.
Yes.
So whether we actually have to have it expended or it has to be basically
Obligated to the school district.
To the district.
Yeah, because
In which case we would have a little bit longer.
I hear the word obligate, I have to have it encumbered. So that's a purchase order. But then a lot of our costs are salary and benefits for positions. So I'm really obligating those positions for that 24-25 school year. So that's what I was trying to get clarity from the state. They didn't really answer it the way I wanted them to. So we'll follow up on that. We got plenty of time to hash that out, what that really means.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Melissa, do you want to talk? Melissa's got a role with the state in relation to the federal relief dollars, so maybe this is a good time for you to
And I'll be
let us
quick
know.
because I know you're in the middle of the presentation. But so the state board set up the commissioners task force on ESSER and EANS. It's got a long, complicated name, but we meet every Friday at 3 p.m. We just, on Friday last week, approved the private school piece of this for the CRSA, the HR 133 funds. And the state board had a special meeting today. So that round has been approved, and we can turn attention now to the ESSER 2 funds. There are about 30 districts in the state that have completed their applications. So that will be on a rolling basis because we're trying to meet, the task force will review and make recommendations to the state board. So we need to hit their monthly timelines. ESSER will be approved monthly by the state board. there were some internal federal timelines. The reason you're not getting a clear answer is we don't have the guidelines from the U.S. Treasury Department to go along with the new federal legislation. That is expected any minute. So they know what the law says, but there's the OIG guidance that still has to be released.
And school districts can submit multiple applications? They
Yes.
don't have to put the whole plan together from the get-go? Okay.
The private schools had to do everything. We had 30 days from the date they applied until the date the funding had to be approved for the private school batch. ESSER is very different because we're not approving the amount of money. That's determined by the Title I formula. So your application will be reviewed for allowable uses to make sure the compliance piece of this is in place, but otherwise it's up to the district, and you guys are getting your funding direct from the feds. So, yeah.
Okay, so this second slide was presented April 12th at the board meeting during that presentation on the COVID-19 response plan. You can see there's multiple items that are listed here, and this came out of about 3 to 4 CARES team that were put together across the district to decide what was needed for a good recovery plan. And so $10.6 million would be dedicated to ESSER 2 monies. And like I said, we anticipated another $23 million out of ESSER 3, and that would cover this in year 2 and year 3. So even though you see 1 year here, this would be, we anticipate year 1, 2, and 3 covering this out of ESSER money, and then in year 4, as you can see the footnotes, we either have to absorb it into our operating funds or those positions would go away with the ESSER money being all spent. We can go through these. I would just note that like the social workers and the high school counselors, those have been on our wish list for quite a few years. We felt it was a good time, good need right now with everything going on with a pandemic, and also to pay for those costs to get them hired and then give us 2 to 3 years to plan to absorb those into our operating funds. A few of those other things are directly related to the recovery plan and would go away after 3 years after the plan is, all the ESSER money is spent. So that's kind of all I wanted to say on that, unless anybody else want to jump in. Dr. Fulton?
Yeah, just one comment. You know, we're very we're fortunate to have access to these funds for the next 3 years. I think it's going to make a big difference for our students and our staff. But we'll have to keep emphasizing that they're one-time funds, and not all of this can be built into a sustainable operating budget. And you know, the hard part is that 3 years from now, people will really like having these things, and they'll want them to stay, and they won't be happy when they go away. We talked about that at the board meeting, you know, in the public arena. So that's just something I think as a committee to be mindful of, and perhaps periodically revisit to make sure that we're keeping that in the forefront of people's minds. Elementary class size is a good example of that. That would be hard to sustain long term unless there were new revenues coming in from the state. So anyway, that's probably can't say that enough in the next 3 years. How's that?
Questions from committee members about this report on the relief funds that are coming to the district? Go ahead.
So one part of clarification might just be a wait and see, but the chart we have presented before us is about $10.5 million annually allocated towards mostly supporting disrupted learning, right, and kind of meeting those needs. And if you look back at the ESSER 3, it's possible ESSER 3 dollars could be 20-some million rather than 10. And so is that something that is still just kind of in executive session not executive team conversation is what I meant to say?
Sure. So the $10 million from ESSER 2 gets us through next year.
Mm-hmm.
And then really ESSER 3 carries us those two additional years using this same basic game plan.
Okay.
So this provides us the consistency of where the money is going for both ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 over the next 3 years. And you can see it's all being targeted toward student learning.
Okay.
Yes, Gary.
Dr. Fulton, I've had some teachers ask, just amongst each other, what is the elementary CARES team, middle school CARES team, and a high school CARES team for the $675,000? Some people just was wondering what that makeup of that was.
Great question. There's as you know, there's a 100+ page report that goes with this one page overview or this one screen overview, and it details a number of the needs that the team that put this plan together identified, and we couldn't meet all of those needs, but what we did do is for each of the 3 levels set aside money so that some of the things that they said, hey, we think these are important for the elementary schools, for example, level to have, that those would be included. In fact, Dr. Gilhouse and I were just talking about one of those earlier. You want to just comment on that a little bit?
I'll be happy to. And the nice thing about these, the $675,000 for each level is that, again, that will renew. Now, when we get the groups back together, what we will do is prioritize. The mini documents is about 30 to 35 pages for each grade, for each level. And so the groups will prioritize them. We'll run them through the executive leadership team and try and get a plan for spending them each year. Some of them will be a one-time hit and a fix. Others of them will be sustained throughout 3 years. I think our first proposal to utilize some of the money is going to be looking at summer school this year for a lot of our kids that need credit recovery or have just flat fallen under their achievement level that they're accustomed to. So we're looking at this week starting to organize and put a plan together for determining how much money of this $675,000 for high schools will go into a high school budget for each one of them to support kids, maybe whether it be free and reduced, or families that may have just lost their jobs and may be going through some very difficult financial times to help support them in summer school. So that money is going to be used a lot of different ways.
So basically, it's checking or a pot of money for each team to play with to identify needs and then have the find resources to meet those needs.
That is correct. And our hope is to find sustainable goals for this short-term money. So putting together programs that will continue to last well beyond the 3 years, which is quite a challenge, but that's our plan. And to prioritize how we're going to use this money each one of the next 3 years.
Yeah, you don't see this here, but you do see this in both the presentation and the full report. You have a series of metrics that we're looking at, whether it's attendance, academic growth, behavior. And so, a lot of this is going to really need to be based on what the data is telling us the greatest needs are. And then we can drill down to the individual student level and really begin to say, what does that individual child need to help get them from where they're at to where they need to be to make sure they're going to be successful in their learning long term.
Okay, yes, Angie, go ahead.
Earlier we said the Sparks money, a lot of it went to the air scrubbers that we had bought and everything. So on indoor air quality, that's like the highest ticketed item. What is entailed in that? For the indoor air quality, it's $2.3 million. What's included within that?
On that board report that was referenced earlier, there is a section on there that breaks it down, and there's a chart that shows exactly which projects we could do and what covers on that job scope of how it falls under indoor air quality.
I just was pulling up that report, so just for folks on the team, just if you go to the district website, and click on the Board of Education, there's another bar that links you to board documents. So if you click in by meeting, you can kind of scroll through the agenda and find this 100-page report. So it lists not only kind of the answer to those details, but it'll also list all the members of the CARES team. So,
At the elementary, the middle.
If you look at that report, it also shows that in reference to air quality, operations was asking for $8 million. So there was much greater needs in reference to improving air quality in our HVAC systems than what's been appropriated there. But first and foremost, we were looking at trying to fill the gap in learning for our kids during the time, and about 20% of the funds is going to air quality.
Thank you. Chris, online, any questions?
No, I'm getting a good education.
Okay, great. He can hear us just fine, and he's learning a lot. For those who didn't hear that. Is Susan Linda on the line as well?
Yes, I am.
Okay, any questions from you as well?
Not yet. Thank you very much.
Okay, sure.
Excellent.
Good. So I almost hesitate to ask this, but in previous conversations, as these dollars are allocated, are there any concerns about risk to the money, meaning legislative decisions that may or may not be made that would be putting into these funds in jeopardy, or is it pretty clear the process for distribution of these funds?
From a federal perspective, and as it connects to the State Department of Education, I think the process for distributing the funds is clear. There has been discussion within the legislature about, and we know there's a limited window in which we have the funds, but it's very, very important that we be able to use these in the ways that we've described if we're going to be able to help students deal with the impact of this pandemic on their lives.
Yes, Melissa.
I would just add to that, we've been doing a lot of work to educate our friends in the legislature about the federal guidelines. I think that OIG guidance from the federal government will go a long way to reduce the impulse to supplant with these federal funds. The state has an obligation. There's both a maintenance of effort requirement in all three pieces of federal legislation, and in the final American Rescue Plan, they've added a maintenance of equity requirement to the federal law. So the stakes are high if the state legislature were to supplant using those funds precisely because of the formula that's used to calculate the state and local share. The Title I formula is poverty-based. The state finance formula is a completely different method of calculating. So it would not be a dollar-for-dollar replacement of funding. So it most likely represents a cut to a lot of districts. So we've been working to make clear what the difference between the federal funding will be for each district versus what a cut to the state finance formula, such as the Senate proposed, would look like. So there's a veto session that begins May 3rd and is set to last through May 11th. And then the final day of the session is scheduled to be May 26th. So it's called Sine Die. So a lot's going to happen in a couple weeks. And I think tomorrow the state will receive consensus revenue estimates. That's the outlook for the state budget for the following year, and kind of a 3-year, 5-year projection of what our finances look like as a state. So that will also be used to shape the discussion, one would hope. So.
And Melissa,
Thank you.
One quick question on clarity. When you talk about maintenance of effort, that's at the state level?
Yes. Yeah, so the maintenance of effort is the total share of state dollars to support public education, and it's a formula that is embedded in, I think it's the same in all three, that isn't it the average of the state share over 3 particular school
Yeah,
years?
it's a 3-year average.
And we have been improving funding each year, so that narrows the gap between what they could technically supplant, but there are rules for how that would be done in the federal law. So you can't, had we seen the state cut across the board at the height of the pandemic, say in October, had there been a budget cut to the state budget across the board that cut school spending at the same % that the rest of the budget was cut, they could do that. But because they haven't done that to the state budget, they can't come in and just cut schools. So that's the maintenance of effort. But then maintenance of equity in this third round says that you cannot cut to the highest poverty schools. There's, I think it's 20% of schools serving and 50% of kids in the at-risk population. You cannot cut spending according to the federal law to those districts at a greater proportion. So if you backfill the Title I dollars, you are hitting at the heart of the highest poverty districts.
Thank you.
I would be remiss not adding on that the importance of the use of the federal funds to address the extraordinary learning, social, emotional, academic needs of the students from the last year and a half, and that the path that we're on under Gannon is about restoring $1 billion cut to public education. And so we're just trying to get back to square one with the state finance commitment, or the state's commitment to the school finance formula. It's a lot of money, but it was a big cut as well. And so it's critical, I think, that we continue on that path of restoring and getting back to adequate levels of funding just for kids to make typical yearly progress, but to close and address some of the gaps that kids experience from the global pandemic. It's critical that we also have these federal relief dollars. So thank you for letting me say that.
Other questions? I have one for clarification, just to make sure we all understand. So the chart of the ESSER II dollars that are being allocated, there's quite a bit of hiring that takes place. Are we to presume that all of these positions are able to be filled with the start of the fall semester?
Yes, we've already started the hiring process. The fact that we were doing hiring related to particularly to secondary schools for addressing reduced secondary workload helped, particularly when you look at, say, adding 10 additional secondary math teachers. We're always hiring elementary teachers, and so we're talking about adding 18 more to reduce class size. That fits right within our staffing approach anyway. So yes, we've been very aggressive on trying to staff all of these positions.
Great. Anyone else have any questions regarding these allocations? Yes, Chris, go ahead.
Hey, give me a minute to turn your volume up. Okay.
With the additional elementary school instructional coaches and additional teachers in math, secondary math, and reducing the class sizes that are all coming from these funds, what happens when these funds run out, and is there a way to sustain the teacher-student ratios, or will those have to be modified and adjusted in the future?
Yeah, great question. So the reality is this, is that when these funds go away, we will, in all likelihood, have to revert back to our current levels of student-teacher ratios, say in elementary school, and some of the positions that we've added, such as the math teachers, those will likely also have to go away. Now, some of the positions may be able to be built into the operating budget. We have 3 years to develop a sustainable plan to do that, but we will not be able to do all of it. We'll be able to do some of it, but not all of it. And we're going to have to prioritize of these positions, which are the most important to keep. And I say that knowing that they're all important to keep. So that's a difficult choice to make. But that's the reality check. We can't do all of this, and so 3 years from now, we will absolutely be going back to, in all likelihood,
bond issue by increasing the number of teachers and i.e. the hours the teachers are spending in the classroom and one-on-one. But all this is going to change in a year or two. How is that going to be addressed with the teachers as we go down the road in the next year or so to keep it at the forefront
sure,
of their thoughts that it's only a temporary situation?
You know, we're going to have to approach this as probably the same way in which we did the bond issue. This is very much an informational campaign. From the very beginning, you have to be clear. Elementary class sizes are going to be reduced. That will happen for the next year, 2 years, or 3 years, but after that, they will go back up. And when communicating that, we have to be honest, we have to be transparent, and we have to be repetitive. And we're going to be repetitive for the next 3 years. Again, once you get to the end of that 3-year time frame, people will not like the fact that they're going back up. And we can talk about that very transparently. But they will know that 3 years from now, they will go back up, in all likelihood. And so it's going to be an important communication consideration for all of us as we help folks understand why are we able to do something today that we can't do tomorrow. Well, that's by design. We phase in by design, we phase out by design.
Other questions? I've got one more, and that is, do we get a sense that the other districts have a similar looking list? Are we comparing notes?
Well, we are comparing notes, and because the funding is very much tied to your poverty index, the amount of money that each district gets can really vary. For example, we're getting considerable more money than, say, a Blue Valley, but we're getting less than a Kansas City, Kansas school district. So it all goes back to your poverty level. And so you absolutely do see variance between school districts in the amount that they're getting. But everybody understands that, and I think the state's worked really hard to distribute this money in as equitable a way as they possibly can.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Melissa.
It's worth noting the state board has 10% of the state share is discretionary for the state agency, and they made it a priority to create a floor so that no district gets in Sr2, no district will get below, 300 per student.
$300.
And then in Sr3, it will be 600 per student is the minimum distribution. So there are, 12 to 15 districts that will benefit from that because their Title I share is, I think Blue Valley is as low as $60-some per student.
Right.
So they will get 300 per student because of the state level up payment. So that's where equity becomes an issue if the state begins to claw back funding in the state legislature.
And I think that was a very widely supported approach because we all had concerns about some of the districts that absolutely were not getting anything as a result of this, and then they have needs too. So that did address some of the equity issues that several of the districts had.
Okay, thank you. That was very helpful. I'm learning as we go here. Any other questions? All right, thank you for the presentation. The information is very helpful. With that, we'll turn to what I call the more fun projects, and that is the new buildings and the construction that we're going to be working on. And we have Tyler Clubb here as well as Rick Atha to give us an update on the timeline for the projects.
Yeah, before I turn it over to Tyler Clubb, I want to emphasize to you that he will be given, as you said, Mr. Stratton, an overview of the first year projects. I would like to invite you to go to our website because we do have that scheduled there, and the schedule goes beyond the first-year projects. And I also would like to caution you that this schedule is subject to change. It's subject to change because there's a lot of variables out there that we just don't know. Right now, for instance, as was stated to the board a couple of meetings ago, the market is volatile right now. Steel prices are at an all-time high, lumber and many material costs right now. So we're not sure how that's going to affect these projects. But we're hopeful. We're seeing, as the board knows, there's been several projects that's come before them already that have come in on budget, under bid, with appropriate bids, and we're in pretty good shape. So with that said, I just want to emphasize that when we're saying it costs $23 million here for Deemer Elementary School, that's a placeholder. That's an estimate. That's what we think. That's a good estimate at this point, but subject to change. So with that said, I'm going to invite Tyler to kind of walk you through some of these projects that we've got scheduled this summer and fall.
Thank you. So as he said, this is a summary. This is a zoomed-in shot of our 5-year plan that's on the bond section of our website. And I'll go through here line by line, kind of touch base on where we're at and explain what this is we are looking at. So it's a calendar for the most part for our first year. And want to sit here and show, like, Coral, this pink line, how it is a pre-bond design time frame that we had. And where we're currently falling at in the spring section is in that design phase, the heavy design, getting those construction documents, getting the bid packages ready to be put out on the streets for bids. And some of that's happened, and some of that is right around the corner. So, and then obviously the blue is where we're at on the construction timeline when this stuff, an appropriate amount of time's given for any particular construction package. So you can see later on down in here, the remodels could be 3 to 6, 9 months long, but you go into the asphalt and the HVAC projects. Of course, those are something that we want to get in and have that 2.5, 3 month timeline to finish out those projects. But at the top, when we deal with the elementary schools, so the first one on this line item is Deemer. So this will be a tear down and replace elementary project, and that design phase is far enough to where we will have our first package of bids to present to the board on the May 17th board meeting. Westwood View, and let me back up, Deemer, there will be 2 packages. So there's a bid packet that could have anywhere from 6 to 12 scopes of work, and then once that's brought in, we'll have the second 6 to 12 scopes of work for the next meeting. All right, so Westwood View, we have that. Currently, we have had our first bid scope. We had 8 projects in there that has gone out to bid. We have received them, and they will be presented to the board on April 26th meeting. The second package is back out on the streets, and that would be in our hands for the May 17th meeting also. Pawnee. So with the staging and the sequencing, Pawnee is not as far advanced as Deemer and Westwood, but that's strategically how we wanted it. We are at the beginning phases of the design, and still meeting with the teachers and the staff and the community group designing and the progress of that elementary school. The next column is the middle school and high school renovations. So Indian Woods, this will have part of the scope at each one of these. We'll have a restroom renovation of some sort. And the biggest renovation for Indian Woods would be a possible 3-story addition on the south side of that building. North High School, it will have selected restroom renovation package, and it will have a possible 6,000 square foot weight room addition as part of their remodel. And Northwest High School, This will have a selected restroom renovation package throughout the building, along with a remodel of the main entry cafeteria commons mall area. Then this takes us down to our furniture scope. So through the course of this 5-year bond, we will replace all furniture in middle and high schools. This first year, we have slated Shawnee Mission North, Trail Ridge, and Horizons. And then this final bottom column, it is back to Dr. Atha's original on these placeholders. Everything on this side on down is not a placeholder. These are projects that have gone out to bid. We have received them, and they have been supplied to the board for motions. And these are things that are currently could at any given time get started and off to runs, but these are our actual numbers for these projects. So asphalt. So this is a yearly asphalt maintenance repair schedule. We're going to touch probably 15 different buildings this summer. And it could be anywhere from a seal coat, gutter and concrete replacement, or 2 and 4 inch overlays, right? HVAC upgrades. It's a big line item. It will be for many years. But we're at 7 or 8 buildings this summer with a $9 million price tag. Security technology upgrades. So security technology upgrades, I'm going to skip a couple columns and go down to infrastructure projects and the security keyless entry. So all 3 of these, they have different line items, but these projects touch each other in some way. So the security technology, this will be the replacement of approximately 2,000 cameras throughout the district. It is starting this summer, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to be done with the district this year. So this will be an ongoing project on a yearly basis throughout the district. The roof upgrade package. We will be at 3 different locations this summer for this $4.3 million budget. Carpet and floor tile. This is almost just like your asphalt parking lots. I mean, this is a yearly maintenance program that goes where we're at on the tile on the carpet inside the buildings that need to be replaced. This is about the same budget that we're going to spend yearly going through changing out those areas. Infrastructure projects, TV monitors. So this will be these projects will be limited at the high schools and middle schools, but we will be at the same locations as the remodeled areas when we do this. And this is pulling all new Cat 6 cabling throughout the building to give us the infrastructure for TVs in the classrooms and any other technology needed areas. So, and that's why I wanted to touch base with, that's why the TVs and monitors are on this same column. And then security keyless entry course. And so there's a district-wide rekey program that is underway. And the newer elementaries, our last 6 or 7 have started this, and we're going to finish it within the elementaries at first, work middle schools, work high schools. And so there's interior master key, exterior master key program. And then that also on that same line item is the keyless entry. And so there's approximately 700 doors district-wide that will get the new technology that's tied in with those cameras and servers district-wide. But if you guys can see, we run down this main line item, and that number at the very bottom, $110 million for year 1. And with that.
And if you recall, David Arterberry said we would have about $132 million available June 3rd, if everything goes according to plan. So we'll have 110. If everything goes according to plan, we'll have about $110 million worth of projects going this summer that will be extending long beyond the summer, maybe as much as 15, 18, 20 months. So there you have it.
Great.
No sleep for the weary.
That's right. That's a lot. Questions? Yes, Susan.
I'm sitting here listening to this, and I did some really quick math. 25 years ago, we put HVAC into Shawnee Mission North, and that was groundbreaking. And now we're upgrading. It's just pretty fun. I just have to tell you, it's pretty fun.
Yep.
And Susan, I think you bring up a very good point there. About 25 years ago, the entire district went to air conditioning in all of its buildings. Guess what? The maintenance of that HVAC has become due at about the same time.
Yep.
And so we're fighting that number to try to get those upgrades and have a plan in place to where we can sustain the HVAC at a higher air quality, an improved air quality in these COVID times, and just because it's the right thing to do. But this district has been working on improving air quality long before COVID-19. 6 or 7 years ago, we've had a partnership with Children's Mercy. So I really applaud our O&M department in thinking ahead, not in preparation for COVID-19, but in preparation for trying to meet the HVAC needs and air quality needs of this district.
And Dr. Arthur, I would just comment to that the key to that then, as it is now, is the communication and the information engagement and process with the patrons of why and why and why and why. And with always the look ahead, because it was the big topic then as it is still the big topic now. So thank you for all that you do.
And I think that's why we're meeting in this committee. I think that's why it's a public meeting. You know, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't pause here and thank the Shawnee Mission School District community for stepping up in the most difficult of times, right after a contentious presidential election, right in the midst of a pandemic. They still stepped up January 26th, 69% supported this bond referendum. And a tax increase. Thank you, Mary. Thank you. But I can't say enough about our Shawnee Mission School District community and the value they place on education.
Other questions from committee members? Melissa?
More of a comment. Last summer at home, we replaced our own residential HVAC. I know what that cost us, but I also know the return on that investment. That I am blown away by how that upgrade has changed our indoor air quality at home and the climate inside our old Fairway house. It was money well spent, and we're seeing a return this year on energy savings and just a more comfortable atmosphere. So that's just critical infrastructure.
And if I could build on that, because that was going to be my question, when I turn to Russ Knapp, who watches each of the budgets of this area, when we look at the projects that we're looking at, not only the ones on this list, but through the total bond project that was approved, should we also be hopeful that over in our general operating we'll have some efficiencies or savings because we have newer buildings? Perhaps when I look at the security, my mind goes to, wait a minute, I got a discount on my insurance when I had more security at my house. I don't know if that translates, but are there ways to absorb some savings on the operating side?
Oh, absolutely. When you put in this new HVAC equipment, we reap the benefits in our utility bills, which is paid for out of our operating funds. We've been seeing for maybe the last 2 years now, our utility rates are always going to go up, but we can minimize how much they go up by doing our own savings, and O&M has done a good job. We hired the energy management personnel to watch the controls on all our, what do we call that, energy, when we monitor all our controls across the
Building management system?
Yeah.
BMS?
Yeah.
Right.
So we're able to do those two things. And then we also had a couple really good winners, minus February. But
Yeah, but and with that addition, I mean, he's definitely helped, one, to document it, and two, to track and to grab that low-hanging fruit to help with the energy.
But I think we're seeing, I know we're seeing energy savings in the 7 new rebuilds that we did as part of the 2015 bond referendum. And we're going to compare that savings with these 5 rebuilds. And the 5 rebuilds we're doing, we're building those schools to LEED certification, which is a little higher level certification. And then we'll be able to have that data to make a determination, did it make a difference? Should we continue to get LEED certification in the future? Or does it not make a difference? So I think, you look at that data to make determinations moving forward.
Chris, did you have a question?
I have a couple of questions, if I may. This LEED certification, how much are we paying to have these buildings certified?
The estimate that come to us that we shared with the board was $227,000 per building.
Now, is that just the certification, or is that the additional items we're incorporating? That we haven't in the past.
Part of that, we've always tried to build to LEED certification, but we never actually completed the paperwork to earn that certificate that goes on the wall. So a portion of that $227,000 goes to what I would call clerical work of logging and collecting the data to earn that certification. And then there's some increased cost to the district on commissioning equipment to make sure that equipment is doing as it's designed to do, make sure that it's operating as it was designed.
Great. The 3-story addition on the south side of Indian Woods, what does that incorporate?
For each floor, there would be a 2 classroom and 1 collaboration room.
Great. Nice. And who is handling the multiple bid packages for the district, Tyler?
I don't know.
Do we have a
can you clarify? I don't know exactly what you're talking about on the multiple
Do we
bid
have
package.
a construction manager that is handling the CM portion or the construction management portion of the bid packaging?
Yes. So there are 2 project managers out that are district employees at O&M that are handling the CMA portion of this.
Great. Oh, excellent.
Chris, we volunteered.
Thank you very much. What was that?
Said we volunteered you to join that team in your spare time.
Well, that's all right. I'm just very happy that you have someone there looking out for the district's best interests.
Yeah.
I'd also
My
like.
last question would be, are the fixtures and furnishings for the elementary schools new, or are they a part of the $23 million estimated cost?
That is a soft cost that's associated with each one of those elementaries and is part of the quote, the turnkey price of that building. So that is part of my $23 million for new furniture.
Great. Thank you, Tyler. Those are excellent. I appreciate those answers.
Thank you.
And I'd also like to add to that, Chris, that also you've got those project managers managing those bids coming in, but you also got Tyler overseeing those bids as they come in, as well as the assistant facility director, Mr. Rimmers. So we've got about 4 or 5 people monitoring those bids as they come in.
I will sleep much better at night. Thank you very much.
Great. Susan Lindahl, any questions?
No question. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Anyone else in the room here with questions on this? Again, lots of great information here. All right, seeing none, thank you very much for this update, and we look forward to future updates.
Thank you.
Because there's a lot, I would just say 100 and some projects going on. That's a huge number. Thank you. The last thing we'll talk about is upcoming meetings. So on your schedule here is a list of the upcoming dates. Committee members had asked, very rightly so, that we try to put these on our calendar as far out as we can. So we've got the additional dates of our future meetings being June 17th, October 14th, and February 17th. Additionally, committee member Chris White had made a suggestion that we're following up on, and that is to see about offering an opportunity for this committee to go visit some of the sites, both the sites of the previous buildings, the buildings from the previous bond, I should say, and then as well as the sites that are going to be worked on going forward. So we're looking at June and July dates. We figured to at least get the school year over with and then put together a calendar there, and we'll work with the committee to see about some field trips to go see those as well.
Yay.
Any other items before the committee here? Great. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy, your expertise, and your participation to make this school district a better place. Thank you.